They say we're in a loneliness crisis, that people are more disconnected than ever, that isolation is dangerous, that we need more community, more connection, more people. But here's the part nobody talks about. Some of you didn't drift away from people. You stepped back on purpose. And instead of feeling lonely, you felt lighter. So what changed? When did you become the person who no longer explains? Because you weren't always like this. There was a version of you who tried harder. You over-explained so nobody misunderstood you. You double-texted so nobody felt ignored. You gave second chances, third chances, sometimes 10th chances. You believed connection required sacrifice, and for a long time, you were willing to pay that price. Until one day, you got tired. Not angry, not dramatic, just tired. Psychologists describe this as emotional overfunctioning, when one person consistently carries more relational responsibility than others. At first, it feels like kindness. Eventually, it feels like exhaustion, and exhaustion changes perception. You notice who only calls when they need support, who disappears when you need the same. These observations don't turn you cold, they turn you aware. And awareness rarely expands your social world, it refines it. There's an interesting shift that happens neurologically when people experience repeated emotional strain. Your brain becomes better at prediction. It starts recognizing subtle patterns, tone changes, inconsistencies, emotional cues. You can almost sense outcomes before they happen. And instead of arguing with that instinct, you listen. That's usually the moment distance begins, not as punishment, not as revenge, but as regulation. Because for the first time, you're asking a different question. Does this interaction cost more energy than it gives? Now here's where people misunderstand the process. They assume withdrawal equals avoidance. But many times, withdrawal is simply space for recalibration. Imagine noise playing constantly in the background for years. When it stops, the silence feels unfamiliar. But then you notice something surprising. You think more clearly. You react less impulsively. You feel less emotionally crowded. That's not disconnection. That's nervous system relief. And yet, there's a subtle risk hiding here. Because peace can become addictive. When solitude feels safe, it's tempting to keep shrinking your world, to remove anything unpredictable. But humans don't heal in permanent isolation. We heal in environments where connection feels safe enough to exist without effort. So the real transformation isn't learning how to cut people off. It's learning how to choose consciously. There's a difference between boundaries and disappearance. Boundaries say, I'm here, but not in the old way. Disappearance says, no one gets access anymore. One creates space, the other creates distance, and the challenge is learning which one you're practicing. Research on long-term well-being shows something counterintuitive. People don't thrive because of large social networks. They thrive because of emotional safety. One honest connection can regulate your nervous system more than dozens of shallow ones. So if your circle became smaller, maybe your standards became clearer. If conversations became fewer, maybe they became more real. And if you find yourself enjoying your own company more than before, that doesn't mean you're losing connection. It might mean you've stopped outsourcing your sense of self. Here's something worth considering. When you stop trying to be understood by everyone, you finally start understanding yourself. That's why this shift often feels peaceful. You're no longer performing emotional roles that never truly belonged to you. You're not withdrawing from life. You're stepping out of patterns. Some people will call you distant. Others might say you're rude. But change is exactly what's happening. You're moving from automatic relationships to intentional ones. And intentional connection looks quieter. So if you've been wondering whether something is wrong because you feel less socially driven than before, maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe you're just no longer chasing noise to avoid silence, and silence is where clarity grows. The goal was to become real about your energy, about your limits, real about who actually adds warmth to your life. Because the healthiest version of connection isn't constant, it's authentic. And authentic connection doesn't require you to abandon yourself. It allows you to arrive as you are. And maybe that's what this phase really is, not isolation, not withdrawal, just the quiet shift towards a life that feels lighter to carry.